The rain hammered against the windows of Mel's Diner on 5th Street as Sarah wiped down the same table for the third time that evening. At 52 years old, her weathered hands told the story of 28 years spent serving coffee and comfort to anyone who walked through those glass doors. But tonight felt different. Tonight, as she watched four small faces press against a rain-streaked window, her heart broke in a way she never expected. The children couldn't have been older than 8 or 9, their clothes soaked through and their eyes hollow with hunger. Sarah had seen plenty of struggling families come to the diner over the years, but something about these 4 kids struck her differently. They weren't with any adults. They were completely alone, huddled together like lost puppies seeking shelter from the storm. Without hesitation, Sarah unlocked the door and ushered them inside. The oldest girl, who introduced herself as Emma, held the hands of her 3 younger siblings tightly. There was Marcus, barely 7, with gap-toothed smile that tried to hide his fear. Little Sophia couldn't have been more than 6, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit like it was her lifeline. And baby Jacob, who Sarah guessed was around 5, stayed silent but watchful, his big brown eyes taking in everything around him. Emma explained in a voice far too mature for her age that they had been living in foster care, but their latest placement had fallen through. Rather than being separated into different homes, they had run away together. They had been sleeping in an abandoned building nearby for 3 days, surviving on whatever scraps they could find. Sarah's heart shattered. She had never been blessed with children of her own, and seeing these 4 beautiful souls without anyone to care for them awakened something fierce and protective inside her. That night, she fed them the biggest meal the diner could offer. She watched as they ate every single bite, their faces lighting up with each spoonful of warm soup and bite of fresh bread. But Sarah knew one meal wouldn't be enough. These children needed consistent care, and while she couldn't take them home due to her tiny studio apartment and limited income, she could do something else. She could make sure they never went hungry again. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work an hour early. She prepared 4 breakfast meals and packed them into takeout containers. When the children appeared at the usual spot near the diner, she was ready. She established a routine that would continue for years to come. Every morning before her shift, she would prepare breakfast. Every evening after closing, she would have dinner waiting. Sarah never asked for anything in return. She never made the children feel like charity cases. Instead, she treated them like family. She learned their favorite foods, remembered their birthdays, and celebrated their small victories. When Marcus lost his first tooth, Sarah made sure there was an extra cookie in his dinner bag. When Sophia had nightmares, Sarah would sit with her in the back booth until she felt better. When Jacob scraped his knee playing in the alley, Sarah cleaned and bandaged it with the gentleness of a mother. The months turned into years, and Sarah's dedication never wavered. Even when the diner's profits were thin and her own paycheck barely covered her rent, she made sure those 4 meals were always ready. She began working extra shifts, taking on catering jobs, and even selling some of her own belongings to ensure she could continue providing for the children. Other employees and regular customers began to notice Sarah's daily routine, and gradually, the whole diner community became invested in the children's well-being. Old Mr. Peterson, who came in for coffee every morning, started bringing books for the kids. Maria, the evening cook, would sneak extra desserts into their dinner bags. Even tough guy regulars like construction worker Bill would slip Sarah a few extra dollars to help with the children's needs. But Sarah faced her own struggles during this time. Her landlord raised her rent twice, forcing her to take on a second job cleaning offices late at night. Her old car broke down repeatedly, and she often walked the 3 miles to work to save gas money. Her own health began to suffer from the stress and exhaustion, but she never complained. The joy on those 4 faces when she handed them their meals each day was worth every sacrifice. As the children grew older, Sarah began to worry about their education. She couldn't enroll them in school without proper guardianship, but she refused to call social services and risk having them separated. Instead, she spent her limited free time teaching them to read using old newspapers and magazines from the diner. She helped them with basic math by letting them count inventory and make change. The children were bright and eager to learn, soaking up every lesson Sarah offered. Emma, now 13, had become fiercely protective of her siblings and deeply grateful to Sarah. She began helping clean tables after the evening rush, determined to give something back to the woman who had become their guardian angel. Marcus discovered a talent for drawing and would create pictures for Sarah using napkins and ketchup. Sophia learned to read at an incredible pace, devouring every book the diner customers brought her. Little Jacob, though still quiet, had grown into a thoughtful observer who noticed when Sarah seemed tired and would always give her an extra big hug. Then one day, everything changed. Sarah arrived at work to find that the children weren't waiting at their usual spot. She waited all day, preparing their meals as always, but they never came. Days turned into weeks, and still no sign of the 4 children who had become the center of her world. Sarah was heartbroken and terrified, wondering if something terrible had happened to them or if they had simply moved on without saying goodbye. The diner felt empty without them. Sarah continued to prepare their meals for months, hoping they would return, but eventually she had to accept that her 4 adopted children were gone. The community that had rallied around the children tried to comfort Sarah, but she struggled with a grief she had never experienced before. She had lost the closest thing to a family she had ever known. 9 years passed. Sarah continued working at the diner, but the spark in her eyes had dimmed. She still showed kindness to every customer, still went out her way to help those in need, but a part of her heart remained forever reserved for 4 children who had disappeared from her life without warning. On a crisp autumn morning, as Sarah prepared for another day of work, she noticed a sleek black SUV parked outside the diner. 4 well-dressed adults stepped out, and Sarah's hand began to shake as recognition dawned. Emma, now 22 and radiant in a business suit. Marcus, tall and handsome at 20, carrying a portfolio under his arm. Sophia, 18 and beautiful, clutching a college acceptance letter. And Jacob, 17 and dignified beyond his years, wearing the confident smile of someone who had found his place in the world. The reunion was overwhelming. Through tears and laughter, the children explained how they had been found by a social worker who specialized in keeping sibling groups together. They had been placed with an amazing foster family who eventually adopted all 4 of them. Their new parents had supported their education, encouraged their talents, and loved them unconditionally. But they never forgot the woman who had saved their lives when they had nothing and no one. Emma had graduated college and was now working as a social worker herself, dedicated to helping children just like they had been. Marcus had received a full scholarship to art school and was already gaining recognition for his paintings. Sophia was heading to Harvard on an academic scholarship to study literature. Jacob was finishing high school with plans to become a chef, inspired by all those years of watching Sarah prepare meals with love. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. The 4 siblings had pooled their resources, worked jobs, and saved every penny for years with one goal in mind. They presented Sarah with a deed to a house, a beautiful 3-bedroom home, just 2 miles from the diner. They had also established a trust fund to ensure she could retire comfortably whenever she was ready. Through tears, they told Sarah that she would always be their first mother, the one who showed them that love exists in the world even when everything seems hopeless. They explained how her kindness had given them the foundation to trust their adoptive family and to believe that they deserve happiness and success. Sarah realized in that moment that her years of sacrifice hadn't been in vain. Every skipped meal, every extra shift, every act of selfless love had planted seeds that had grown into 4 incredible human beings who were now making the world a better place. The story of Sarah and her 4 children reminds us that kindness is never wasted, even when we can't see the results immediately. Small acts of compassion can change the trajectory of someone's entire life. Sarah's willingness to share what little she had created a ripple effect that touched not only 4 children, but everyone they would go on to help and inspire. Sometimes the greatest gifts we can give don't cost money, but require something far more valuable: our time, attention, and genuine care for another human being. Sarah's story shows us that we all have the power to be someone's guardian angel, to be the person who believes in others when they can't believe in themselves. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of kindness. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories to hear more incredible tales of how ordinary people create extraordinary change through simple acts of love. Remember, you never know how your kindness today might change someone's entire tomorrow.